I hoped they would pay themselves back in 5 years. And you know what? Our next years could be awful and it could be like a losing battle for years. I don't know. Maybe we just have beginner's luck. We definitely have beginner's luck. Hey friends, I'm here today with Christine of Rushing River Apiaries. She's from Terrace, which is a couple hours away from me. And I met her through, she's our local bee inspector. So she came to inspect my bees. We got talking business as well. And I invited her to come. So something I learned this year is that there's different breeds of bees, different varieties of bees. I didn't really understand that a whole lot. So do you know, because these bees came from Christine, these are nukes from her. Do you remember what type these are?
Well, ours are kind of northern mutts.
Okay.
So there are lots of...
I like a regionally adapted bee.
A lot of our stock, our original stock came from New Zealand. But then they have been mixed in with Saskatraz queens, so stock from the Saskatraz project, which is basically, it takes place in Saskatchewan. They breed queens based on winter survival and honey production. So those are the two things they prioritize.
That's what we want.
Yeah. So they grow them in Saskatchewan, and then in order to make them available early in the spring, they actually ship the virgin queens down to California to mate, open air mate, and then they bring them back up to sell these winter adapted queens. So now we raise our own northern mutts based on like our survival in this region specifically, but they came from a mix of those two stocks.
Okay. And queen breeding is something I just can't even wrap my head around at this point.
Yeah, it's a tricky business, but it's really a lot of fun and one of the more satisfying things to do with bees. The bees can basically turn any egg the queen lays into a queen just by feeding it a different diet and treating it a bit differently. And we as a beekeeper can kind of fool them into doing that for us so that we can produce lots of queens.
So on here, is there different types of bees? Like it's the same breed, but then like within the family structure, how do we tell the difference? This is one thing I've struggled to wrap my head around.
Yeah, so there will only be one queen in this box. She'll probably be down below, closer to where the brood is, but the queen is easy to see the difference in. She's a bit longer and pointier at the end. All of these bees are sister bees, so they're all daughters of the queen, but the queen will mate with 15 or 20 different drones at the start of her life. So they have the queen's genetics plus the genetics of like one of 15 or 20 different fathers. So they're not clones of her. Interestingly, male bees are just an unfertilized egg. So male bees have only the DNA of the queen and no DNA from a father.
So she lays an egg that's unfertilized and it still hatches.
Yeah,
that
turns
wild.
into a male. It is.
That's wild.
And she does that selectively.
So how do we tell the difference between a male and a female bee?
I'm looking for a drone on here and I don't see one. But
they start killing drones.
They do.
In the fall.
Yeah.
Once the weather gets below what temperature?
It's more about when the nectar and the pollen disappear, and so since you're feeding, you'll prolong that a little bit.
They did start kicking drones out,
did
though.
they? Okay.
Because I did a few times when I was out here first thing in the morning, noticed some dead ones out in front that I figured was them starting to kick drones out. Because we've had frost already.
Okay. Yes, then you may have already lost your drones, because I don't see any in here at all.
We've had frost, and I only started feeding like a week ago.
The drones are quite a bit bigger than the females. They have like big round bums, big eyes that cover their whole face.
So it's September 13th today, and we're looking at frames that are barely capped at all. How do we feel about how they're going into winter with their honey super looking like this?
They definitely have lots of food. They'll continue to work at drying and capping it as long as your daytime highs are getting up to around 10.
Okay, we're doing good for that. We'll probably do that for the rest of the month at least. And we do have some October weather like that. Overnight it'll be cold.
Right.
But during the day it'll be warm.
Yeah, and it's the daytime where they get that work done anyway. So I don't see anything to be worried about. There's also, just because the honey isn't capped doesn't mean that it's not at that moisture content. Sometimes we'll harvest honey that is only partially capped and it's still nice and dry as honey, so it won't spoil on them, and they'll just access that honey first. They'll leave the capped stuff for later.
They know to do that.
Yeah,
they're smart little bees.
They are. Often there's still capped honey left in the hive in the spring.
Don't drop it in there. Crunch, crunch, crunch.
The lighting's terrible. That's fine. You can turn it off now.
many more to go?
I have 3 ready for you and 2 light ones.
Jeez, it'll be a full bucket.
Yes.
Oh, this is boring.
It's gonna, yeah, I'm gonna be like.
The boringest video. They waited the whole time.
So this morning we were jarring up honey. It's a very light honey. It's so delicious. So we did some in buckets. We did some in jars for gifting. We got to relabel them. We were just
16 pounds.
That one's 16 pounds.
8 kilos.
So then
8 years.
we had it in 2 buckets. And what it does is the wax cappings and such, you can see how it's lighter there. They float to the top. So there was a line of them in both tops of the buckets. And they, you know, I took out the honey out the bottom until I started getting a bit of wax. And now I'm combining the 2 into one. And then when they, I ordered some straining bags that will sit over top. Rowan, can you cool down for a second? That will sit over top of a 5-gallon bucket to strain out the wax out of this last bit of honey. And it'll probably be another few quarts of honey. And also the cappings bucket that I was using, there's very little honey in here. It's mostly wax, but this will also get dumped through the straining bag. When I receive the straining bags, I just ordered them in the mail. Now, I had used this heated blanket, actually I can unplug this now, to keep the extractor warm. This, extractors are a sticky mess to clean, that's for sure. So I'm not looking forward to that, but thankful we could borrow an extractor from friends. That wraps up our 2021 honey harvest. Approximately, so honey, a pound here is worth between $6 and $9 a pound, depending on who you buy from. We spent approximately $1,500 Canadian on the, just a second. Hey Freya, can you stop playing with the buckets of honey? Put it up on the table, because now Rowan's playing with them. Rowan, leave it. Hamish, please stop playing with the extractor. Okay, I don't need it tipping over. It's leaned up there, draining, leave it. Okay, we spent approximately $1,500 Canadian between like the hives, the bees, small tools, bee suits. That's not including the extractor. We borrowed the extractor, but like the smaller tools for extracting honey, we spent approximately $1,500 Canadian, I think a little under. At $6 to $9 a pound, we got 125 pounds of honey last time and 80 pounds of honey this time, approximately. So a good 200 pounds of honey. At $6 a pound, that's $1,200. At $9 a pound, that's $1,800. So I'm gonna confidently say our bees paid for themselves in the first year. Either way, it was a really exciting beekeeping season, and I'm excited going forward to see what our bees do next year.